Now listen, before any Dodgers fans dislike the video or start getting mad in the comments, I should probably clarify a few things. I don't think that Dodger Stadium as a building is bad. The building by itself is one of the greatest ballparks in Major League Baseball. I mean, just look at that view of downtown LA. But rather, there are some other circumstances surrounding its existence that make me dislike this place quite a bit. This is why Dodger Stadium is terrible. Anyone who's familiar with LA will tell you that traffic in LA and the surrounding area is terrible. This problem isn't mutually exclusive to Los Angeles, but in LA, the traffic is seriously bad. The reason for this can be traced back to the post-war era, where Americans' newfound love for the freedom that the automobile granted them prompted them to build new, shiny freeways right through their cities. If you look at virtually any American city, you'll notice that they all have freeways running in or near their city centers. These freeways serve the purpose of connecting the center of the cities with the suburbs. And that's all fine and good. I'm not anti-freeway or anything. In fact, I enjoy driving on freeways as long as there's no traffic. But what city planners of decades past failed to realize is that there's a better way to connect people. I'm of course talking about trains! Unfortunately, as so many American cities were racing to build freeways, many of them forgot about the beautiful thing that is public transit. Subways in particular are great because they can move so many more people than highways can. New York is a shining example among US cities of how to build a proper subway network. And although the system is not without its problems, you have to admit that the coverage is excellent. And then there's LA's map. Yeah, LA does have plans to expand their network in the coming decades, but until then, they have a lot of catching up to do. People don't drive because they want to. People drive because the alternative isn't any better, which brings me back to Dodger Stadium. If you think about it, Dodger Stadium is a perfect fit for LA because it perpetuates the car-oriented culture that is synonymous with the region. I mean, just look at this picture for a second. The stadium is in a sea of parking. It's not integrated into the community like Wrigley Field or Fenway Park. Rather, Dodger Stadium is given its own area completely surrounded by parking lots. It's clear that not only are they expecting people to drive to Dodgers games, but they're actively encouraging it. This inevitably leads to traffic jams. Lots of traffic jams. I mean, this can't really come as a surprise to anyone. You literally have tens of thousands of people driving their cars to the same place at the same time. And I don't know about you guys, but this is definitely not something I would want to go through. I mean, I love baseball as much as the next guy, but surely a baseball game isn't worth enduring this. And so that made me wonder, how else could one get to Dodger Stadium? These were my findings. So, fun fact about me, when I was in high school, I used to walk up a hill to school every single day. So then I wondered how an avid hill walker such as myself would go about getting to Dodger Stadium on foot. To absolutely no one's surprise, it's very inconvenient to do so. So for our little experiment, let's say we're staying at the Westin Bonaventure Hotel, which is here, and we want to walk to Dodger Stadium, which is here. That's about 2.71 kilometers directly, or 1.69 miles for all you Imperial people out there. Now, I'm gonna type those directions into Google Maps, and we're gonna see where Google recommends us to walk. Okay, looks like we got a 40-minute walk on our hands. It's 1.8 miles, which is a bit longer than the direct route, but that's to be expected. Our route first takes us up West 4th Street, on a narrow sidewalk while cars are coming down the hill at highway speeds. Then we turn right to head north on South Beaudry Avenue. We walk under Highway 101, where in very LA fashion some homeless people have set up shop. Then we make a left turn onto the iconic Sunset Boulevard, which, to be honest, I don't really get the hype, but I imagine it looks more picturesque when it's actually sunset. Then we make a right turn to walk up Vin Scully Avenue, which for a residential street is very wide, but I guess that's to accommodate all the car traffic that's heading to and from Dodger Stadium, because never mind the people who might be trying to walk. And at the end of Vin Scully Avenue, we find ourselves at the entrance of Dodger Stadium, where we are then tasked to walk along this pathway right next to cars that are queuing up to get into the parking lot, and then we have to make our way across said parking lot while trying not to get hit by people who are fighting for parking spots. Actually, I don't know if, parking spots are reserved or if, specific lots are reserved or you get assigned to a specific lot when you pull up. I don't know how it works. The point is people are going to be more focused on actually trying to find their spot. Also, I should probably mention this, since most of the baseball season takes place during the summer, it's probably going to be very hot on this day and the walk is going to be very uncomfortable. But if you manage to tough it out, you will finally find yourself at Dodger Stadium. Yeah, so that was very unpleasant. How else can we get there? Chances are, if you're going to a Dodgers game, you might be coming from one of LA's sprawling suburbs. Fortunately, these suburbs are connected by a network of commuter rail trains, which are operated by Metrolink. That's great, you might be thinking. I'll just take the train. That way I don't have to deal with traffic. Oh, but it's not that simple. As it turns out, there are actually a lot of areas that Metrolink doesn't cover. So most likely you'll have to take a very long bus ride just to get to a Metrolink stop in the first place, which unfortunately is the reality of living in suburbia. And then there's Metrolink itself. And I don't mean that the trains or the stations themselves are bad. In fact, they're pretty good, but the schedules suck. These are the schedules for trains going from San Bernardino to LA's Union Station. There are more trips scheduled for the mornings. After all, it is a commuter train, and they're catering to commuters who commute to LA for work. And then in the afternoon, trips become hourly. There's a 2-hour period where there aren't any trains at all. And then people wonder why Southern California highways are so congested. And this is one of the better examples. These are trips from Lancaster to LA. There's a 4-hour period with no trains. So if you want to be at Dodger Stadium in time for a 7 p.m. start, you have to be at the station before 2:11 p.m. Now, to be fair, a lot of this isn't Metrolink's fault. They do have to share tracks with freight trains, unfortunately, which oftentimes contributes to delays and just the terrible schedules. Not to mention, a lot of their network is single-tracked, which definitely restricts how often they can run trains. If Metrolink had more funding, they could probably build more tracks and run trains more frequently, which would definitely help to take cars off the highways. Because right now, anyone who grew up in a place like Germany would probably look at Metrolink and laugh. If you live in or near the LA city proper, you might be able to hop on one of the metro lines, and depending on where you live, that might entail taking a subway or an LRT or some mix of both. Ultimately, taking any of these forms of transit will take you to Union Station, and then it's up to you to do a similar walk to the one I showed you earlier, unless you want to spend a few extra bucks on an Uber. Alternatively, you can take the Dodger Stadium Express, which is a bus service that goes from Union Station to Dodger Stadium. But buses get stuck in car traffic too, so I can't imagine this would be much better. Guess it beats walking in the summer heat. The site of Dodger Stadium currently looks like this, but did you know that back in the day it used to look like this? Why, it's basically unrecognizable. What happened? How did this become Dodger Stadium? Well, in the 1950s, the then Brooklyn Dodgers were owned by a guy named Walter O'Malley. O'Malley wanted to build a brand new stadium for the Brooklyn Dodgers to replace the aging Ebbets Field. Interestingly enough, the site that was proposed for this new stadium ended up becoming the site where Barclays Center stands today. But yeah, O'Malley couldn't get his stadium built in Brooklyn, so he moved the team to Los Angeles, where they are today. The new Dodger Stadium was to be built at Chavez Ravine, an area of land just north of downtown. The only problem was there were already people living there. Chavez Ravine was populated by Mexican Americans. I'm not going to go too in-depth about the history of segregation or anything like that, but it was and still is commonplace to find neighborhoods dominated by one race in particular. At first, developers that represented the city of Los Angeles offered cash payments to the residents of Chavez Ravine in hopes that this would get them to move out. This got some people to leave, but many families were adamant about staying put. This started a back and forth affair which continued until Norris Polson was elected mayor of Los Angeles. During his time as mayor, the plan to build public housing in the area was axed. This is because he viewed public housing as socialist and un-American. And so, during his time as mayor, the city of Los Angeles repurchased the Chavez Ravine property from the Federal Housing Authority. Several of the area's residents had fought in World War II and now felt betrayed by the country they had fought for. In 1959, the remaining Chavez Ravine residents were removed from their homes, resulting in the heartbreaking pictures like the ones you're seeing on your screen right now. Many baseball fans aren't even aware of this, but unfortunately, it remains a dark part of Dodger Stadium's history. At some point you have to ask yourself, is this really worth a baseball stadium? The Dodgers are supposed to represent the city of Los Angeles, so why mistreat the very same people that you want rooting for the team? The fact that an entire community was destroyed just to build a sea of asphalt with a stadium in the middle is nothing short of sickening. Now look, if you like Dodger Stadium, I'm not trying to stop you. I'm sure many people have fond memories associated with this place, and I respect that. But after what I showed you here today, I hope you see my point of view and why it's personally hard for me to like this place. And maybe I even taught you a few things that you didn't know before watching this video. Hopefully I gave you something to think about the next time you visit Dodger Stadium. At the end of the day, it's a unique place that's home to a prestigious baseball team. But like many things in life, there's plenty of bad to go along with the good. But from my perspective personally, I will always have the view that Dodger Stadium is terrible.